I'd finished Birdie, and Elliot Kastner, veteran producer, as he calls himself, at Pinewood Studios, he in the commissary, he just dropped the novel on my desk and on my table, and I remembered it from before. So I reread it, and then I thought, well, actually, I would like to have a go at writing a screenplay, taking Falling Angel, as the book was called, as the basis of the screenplay. As anyone who's actually read the book and seen the film, they are very different. The big changes I made in the script from the book, you know, obviously great deal of the dialogue, most of the dialogue is original to the film. Different characterizations, different characters I introduced, but mostly the book is set all in New York. You know, I had shown my screenplay to William Hjortsberg, the novelist, and you know, he acknowledged that I had really drastically changed his piece, but he had thought, you know, at one point that he might actually set half of it in New Orleans, so I didn't feel that I was completely betraying his original work. But the Harlem thing fascinated me because I did a lot of research, and also I suppose because I'm not an American and certainly not a New York filmmaker, I was kind of ingenuous about going into Harlem. Everyone said it would be too difficult to film there. And the more I went on my scouts and researches, and particularly as I put it into the story, I quite liked the Harlem of that period. The book was set in 59. I actually pulled it back a bit to 55. The logic being that 59 was on the cusp of the 60s and considerable change. 55 still belonged to the 40s. And because of the Second World War, which put everything on, you know, on a pause button really with regard to development, if I could get it into the 40s, I would almost get it back into the 30s. And it was to try and give it a more period film, really. I was deliberately trying not to do a hip, you know, Doris Day 50s thing. I didn't want that look. I wanted it to be monotone. I wanted it to be grittier. I suppose I wanted to make a noir film. You know, I was shooting it in color, but actually, you know, from a photographic point of view, Michael Serrison, the cinematographer, and Brian Morris, the production designer, and myself, we came to the decision that we wanted to make a black and white film in color. It wasn't winter, so I had to recreate winter with snow. And then suddenly we were in New Orleans, and you suddenly had a totally different kind of light to cope with. It's interesting because when he arrives in New Orleans, he gets off the train, which we shot in New Jersey. And so we had to make New Jersey light look like New Orleans light. So that was always very tricky. The most difficult and most beautiful light to have is going from day into evening, you know, so-called magic hour. Magic hour, in my experience, usually is a lot shorter. I think they should call it magic half hour, actually. So you kind of try and construct your day so that that kind of light can be used for as long as possible. Sometimes I used magic hour, but each evening doing the same scenes and coming back to do that scene, so you can capture that light. I was in New York and I met with Mickey at his hotel, and we had a cup of coffee, I remember, and then he said, let's go for a walk. And we were just walking around the block, really, to get some air and to discuss the script. And whilst talking, you know, he would ask me questions. He saw one kind of film. I tried to explain to him that it was a different kind of film. Suddenly we realized we'd been walking for, you know, a good few hours, and suddenly it was dark. The process really for a director and a writer working with an actor is, I suppose more the director really, is that they have to be comfortable with you, that, you know, that the questions, one, are answered properly, and all the questions that actors give you are answered. And will they be comfortable, you know, spending 3 months of their life every single day in your hands, so to speak? And so it was feeling us out, both of us, really. That's really what we were doing. And anyway, suddenly we were walking around New York and it was dark. And he said to me, you know, forget all those other guys. He said, you know, I'll do the movie. And if someone wants to do your film that much, then you have to warm towards them. I originally wanted De Niro to play that part. De Niro then said I didn't want to play that part. Perhaps I might play the other part, the devil. And then I'd asked Jack Nicholson, who was interested in playing the devil part, which I thought was quite good. So Jack and I met on that. Then De Niro said, you know, because I kept meeting with Robert De Niro, and he never really would say yes. He would just say, well, let me think about it more. We would go through every dot and comma of the script. And we met so many times. And then finally, he phoned me and he said, Alan, I am of a mind to do the film. Even so, he couldn't bring himself to say yes, but I always thought it was a great phrase, I'm of a mind to do it. And he, you know, I think he didn't do more than 5 or 6 days shooting, but his presence is so important in the film. I was really thrilled to get him. I cast Lisa Bonet. To tell you the truth, I wasn't really aware of The Cosby Show. You know, I'd come from Britain and it's not the sort of program that interests me. And so I wasn't aware that she was this sort of, she had this squeaky clean image on that show. She came in and she read and she was great. She was a very, very good, accomplished actress. She looked very young. I think she was 19 when she worked on the film. I was kind of nervous that she would be doing quite difficult love scenes with Mickey Rourke, and went to great pains to make sure that she was going to be comfortable. To tell you the truth, she was infinitely more comfortable than the rest of us when we came to do those scenes. She was very mature about it, and if anything, I think, you know, Mickey and myself were the ones who were the most nervous shooting those very, very difficult scenes. The voodoo thing, it's a tiny aspect of the film, really. I mean, it just happens to be relevant to Epiphany and her character. I always thought that when anybody had ever done voodoo before, it was somewhat cliche, somewhat stylized, and it's very hard to do it for real. I just really saw as much old, kind of black and white documentary footage on voodoo, obviously, to give me the essence and the feel of what I was doing, you know. And then I had Louis Falco, who was the choreographer on Fame, with me. And Louis choreographed the whole thing for me, and I saw the rehearsals, and if Louis had his way, that section of the film would have been about 30 minutes long, you know, and I had to condense it down into, you know, a very, very short period of time in the end. The most difficult thing was the actual, you know, supposed killing of the chicken, which of course, you know, we are not allowed to do on film. So that was all an illusion, thanks to a very clever prop man and a lot of phony blood. But it's actually quite effective on film. The original attraction was this fusion of the two genres of the detective with the supernatural. I approached it totally for real. Never at any point did I not think that it would happen. I think people sell their soul to the devil every day of the week. In Hollywood, even more regularly.
Voodoo is African spirituality to begin with. It conjures up images of horrendous things, but it is African spirituality. And the word voodoo literally means spirit, deity, and God, the creator of the universe.
The religion dates 7,000 BC out of Benin and Senegal, Western Africa.
Voodoo is a religion, it's a philosophy, it's a way of life. It incorporates just extraordinary music, art, dance.
Voodoo came to the New World by way of the African slave trade.
When the slaves were first brought to New Orleans, they were denied their old world religion, and they were forced into Catholicism because that was the only legal religion in Louisiana.
From the moment of the beginning of the slave trade in 1510, when the slave ships arrive on the coast of Africa, they have missionaries on board. The idea is to immediately Christianize, give religion to these people who are perceived as not having a religion.
When you cut off or people disassociate them from their own spirituality, from their cosmology, from their culture, from their language, from even the foods that they would normally eat, you are in absolute control of what they do. And that's one of the reasons that what voodoo has suffered so very badly. It was no accident. It had to be taken away because it meant a means of absolute control for the Africans who were brought to this continent.
The slaves were brought from several different African nations and placed together on plantations. They had no way to communicate with each other because they spoke different languages. So art, music, dance, rhythm, songs became forms of language that encoded meaning and legacy.
A unique mixture occurred between African traditional religion, voodoo, the Yoruba religion, and Catholicism. They seem to blend very well because the two religions had a lot in common. And in a lot of places, it was forbidden for people of African descent to worship God in the way they had done in Africa. So in places where Roman Catholicism was the dominant religion, the two religions merged because the voodooists saw a lot of similarities between the voodoo god forces and the Catholic saints.
They soon realized they could substitute the names of the African Orishas for the similar Roman Catholic saints, and they did so, but they also enjoyed the pomp of the Roman Church and remained Roman Catholic as well. Thus you have the Creole voodoo of New Orleans.
After the Haitian Revolution, there was a huge influx of Haitians into the port of Louisiana, port of New Orleans. Some 10,000 individuals came into the city, and it said doubled the population of Louisiana.
They brought with them their energy in terms of how they preserved the energy of Africa's presence in Haiti. Because voodoo didn't originate in Haiti. Voodoo actually originated on the continent of Africa from Benin and Dahomey.
This city is very, very significant because without it, there would be no foundation. There would be no foundation for voodoo as we know it in North America.
There are a lot of differences in New Orleans voodoo than you'll find in voodoo practiced other places. Our situation is very different politically, socially from Africa, from Haiti. We do not suffer from a lot of the ails that are going on in those other regions and those other cultures. You don't see as many sacrifices done here in New Orleans. I'm not saying they aren't done, but we don't have a lot of the dire circumstances that require regular sacrifice like they are done in Haiti and Africa.
One of the real benefits of practicing voodoo in New Orleans is that it's so extremely tolerated here.
Today, people are practicing voodoo all over the city without even knowing it. They're cleaning their front steps with red brick dust, which is a spiritual cleansing tradition. They don't even know that they're doing voodoo. They just know that their mom did it and her mom did it and so on and so forth.
I know if someone touches me with a broom, I have to throw salt over my shoulder.
They're putting a few drops of urine in their mop water. They have no idea. That's another voodoo tradition. They just know, once again, their mom, her mom, etc. did it.
I know if I want to clean my house, purify my house, I can put ammonia in the corners of every room. That gets rid of the stale energy.
It's possible for me to go out in the middle of the street and do a ceremony with my neighbors to fight crime, and the police don't cart me off to jail. They block off the streets so we won't be run over.
Even if they're not practicing voodoo every day, everyone knows who the Loa and Orisha are.
The veve are graphic drawings that are done in the process of a ceremony. They're integral to any voodoo ceremony, although they also can be painted on walls or incorporated into art forms. They're generally drawn in cornmeal or brick dust, sometimes incorporate coffee grounds, but they're generally drawn on the ground, and they hold the force or power of a particular spirit. It's almost like you're drawing their signature, and it calls them up through the veve itself. The veve are often used as kind of mouthpieces for the spirit, and offerings are put on them to feed the spirit. They're reflections of what goes on in heaven.
For us in voodoo, Marie Laveau is considered the great ancestor because she did a lot to bring the knowledge of what voodoo is to the forefront.
Marie Laveau was a quadroon. Her father was French, and her mother was part African and part Indian.
She was a devout Catholic. She went to Mass every single day. She openly practiced voodoo.
Here's Marie Laveau with her rooster. And she's also standing next to this other doll which I made, which is Yemaya. And Marie Laveau most likely was a priestess of Yemaya.
You know, in doing some research, I found out quite a lot more. She was really involved in the social fabric, a businesswoman. She was a businesswoman as she owned her own shop, a hair shop. As such, was influential in possibly creating policy because she would do the hair of all of the wealthy women here and who had access to the men who made the decisions in terms of power and politics and policy.
More than 150 years after her death, literally millions of people come from all over the world to see her tomb, to hear her story, to find out who she was, and to seek her blessing, which is something.
For African Americans and people of African descent, Congo Square in New Orleans is of the utmost historical importance, because at one time it was the only place that people of color could lawfully congregate in New Orleans and do anything resembling ritual dance. Trees do have significance in voodoo. The significance varies. Sometimes the trees are medicinal. Sometimes the trees are sacred to certain of the deities like Shango. Hollywood's depiction of voodoo is what we call Hollywood voodoo.
It's more exciting for people to watch a movie about someone getting stuck with a pin and killed with a voodoo doll than it is to watch a movie about someone getting healed with a pin and a voodoo doll, which is actually their primary use.
That was done by the trade tours of the healers. It was actually their method of medical record keeping. When you would go to the healer, they would pull your doll from the shelf, knew from where the pins were placed, what type of ailments you had, how you were treated, and when you were treated. It was not a torture thing, as Hollywood would let you believe.
When I took my first trip to Haiti, I asked the dumbest question I could ask. Do you all use voodoo dolls to stick people with needles? And they laughed at me. They said, that's only in Hollywood. That is not a part of our religion. We are a God-fearing people. We believe in one God.
Hollywood wants to make you believe there's one good on one side, there's also evil. And this evil is regarded as satanic. But there's nothing evil, really. There's always good in evil. And there's also evil in good.
It's not Hollywood's fault only, because the public should not rely on movies to get an accurate depiction as to what a religion is all about.
Most voodoo practitioners, 90% of their work is going to be healing work, whether it's healing the heart, healing a love issue. It's still about healing, not about hexing people and hexing your neighbor. There's not a lot of that going on.
During Angel Heart, I was in the famous dance scene of Angel Heart when Lisa Bonet and the chicken that was dressed, and we had to make sure that the neck was wrung so the blood could flow. But keep in mind, no animals were harmed during the filming of that movie, and the chicken actually neck was not wrung.
Often I think that in particular films, maybe such as Angel Heart, while there might have been some research, things get glamorized a little bit more. Rituals are performed out of context or performed for no reason whatsoever. But that can be very detrimental in terms of the interpretation of particular practices.
In the actual practice of voodoo, dance is a big part of it. In the film Angel Heart, you get a good perspective of what happens, because there is a certain level of frenzy that does occur. When you are intoxicated with the gods, you can get that effect that is seen there. I actually have observed certain ceremonial rituals where they begin with sacrificing of animals and the blood is smeared over everyone. So that element of the blood, that was pretty accurate depiction.
Sometimes a chicken may be used, or another animal, to take negativity off of someone. And that animal is very well respected because he's taking that ailment, sickness, or negativity out of that person, giving up his or her life, that chicken or other animal. And sometimes the blood may be used as a cleanser. There's different rituals would employ animals in different ways.
Certainly they were not doing one of the benevolent, pure, cool-tempered ceremonies. This was not a rata rite, as they would be called. This was definitely a very magical, turbulent, revolutionary kind of ritual. It was very dark. As with any form of gossip, say, there's some basis in truth. There's some recognition of a true element, but it's so skewed, so twisted, that it does more harm than good to make reference to it.
After you're done, the animal will be plucked and shared with the participants. Some rituals, if the animal's being used to take an ailment or negativity out of someone's body, of course, that animal's going to be disposed of. You're not going to want to eat that because it's now inhabited by a lot of negativity and some type of illness. So for every type of ritual, there is a protocol of what type of animal would be used, if any.
It's hard to know what that scene really means. You know, the drums are beautiful. They're wearing the white clothes. You're kind of told, look, this is a voodoo ritual. But then what happens in the ritual is not what would happen in a true voodoo ritual. It's just, you don't see an altar. You don't see offerings being made. Who are the spirits? If offerings were made, they would be made to the voodoo gods. Where are they? What is happening? None of this represents a true voodoo ritual. In Angel Heart, Robert De Niro plays Louis Cypher, which of course is Lucifer. Interestingly, the lawyers are Rome and Winesap, which are the apples, you know. So again, we have this tongue in cheek. But he's supposed to be Satan. The devil made me do it, you know, which brings the idea of possession. If you're possessed, it must be by the devil. If you have possession in voodoo, then you must be doing it. This is all outside ideas to voodoo, because in voodoo, there isn't an entity that is the devil.
Voodoo does not recognize a Satan per se, doesn't even recognize hell as this unique environment that's separate from the earth experience. Most Haitians would probably tell you that living on earth is hell. It's hard for people. I once talked to a wonderful old Haitian priest and artist who told me that he was going to show me a portrait of Satan. He said he had one in his little hut, and he ran off, came back, and magnificently opened up a dollar bill and showed me the portrait of Satan. It was great. And to his mind, here in America, we're worshiping the economy and saluting the dollar bill. That's who we respond to, and that is Satan, and he's not far off.